Well, howdy, roofers, and welcome to Roofer Growth Hacks, the podcast that's dedicated to highlighting those in the roofing industry, learning how they overcame growth challenges with creative growth hacks, and connecting them with others in the roofing industry. I'm your host, Chris Hunter, founder and chief marketing officer of roofingsites.com. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Digital Marketing for Roofers. Got a little story for you. Jason Todd is the founder and CEO of Thinker Ventures. With more than 2 decades of experience as an entrepreneur, executive, and advisor, Jason has helped countless businesses scale through strategy, technology, and leadership. He's also the author of What Could Be, Creating a Life of Meaning and Purpose. So listen up to Jason as he shares some awesome growth hacks. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us on Roofer Growth Hacks today. I really appreciate you coming on here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. So let's kick this off. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your entrepreneurial journey? Where did it start? Where are you now?
I think what you would call, a serial entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur for my entire life, dreaming about companies, creating logos and letterhead as a young child before I had any customers. And that, I think, has been my journey. I'm a good creator. I can create something out of nothing. From back in 2002, when I started the first e-commerce company selling residential and light commercial heating and air conditioning products directly to consumers, to then starting an electrical contracting company. I've owned a gym. I've been co-founder of some tech ventures, and now Thinker Ventures, a private equity firm.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What do you do at Thinker Ventures?
We invest primarily in family-owned and privately held businesses, acquiring them at a point where they have reached either a point of necessary transition, either by choice or circumstance, or they've just tapped out in their ability to lead the company into the future of opportunity. So, if you think about Thinker Ventures, our tagline is discover what's next. A lot of these families don't know what's next and they don't know how to get there. But when we come in, we play a pivotal role in value creation, applying or building on what I would say is, a highly relationship oriented business, those family owned, privately held businesses, and then stewarding them into results. And so we take a balanced approach. Both relationship and results are mutually important, and one feeds the other. Whereas typical private equity focuses a lot on results, and there's, predatory capital structures and M&A and roll-ups and laden them with debt. We don't follow those same principles. It's really, how do we acquire and manage these family-owned businesses into the future, expanding on what the team is capable of doing. That's where our value comes in.
Awesome. And what kind of businesses is typically in your wheelhouse on this? Are we talking roofing type companies or any other kind of companies?
Yeah. Manufacturing companies, maybe some service companies. We get into a little bit of real estate. We get into some spec work, things that, unknown time frame, unknown return, but we have confidence that this is going to grow. So we're never spinning a wheel or pulling the lever of a slot machine. We do some significant, rigorous financial analysis, and then we understand what our hit list is going to be, the things that we're going to do to initially create value, but then how we're going to steward that into the future. We like to see businesses that have a track record of stable profitability, rather than businesses that are suffering. We do have a path, though, for businesses that are stuck, small, mid-sized businesses. We have some folks on our team and who are connected with us, who are the folks who are able and willing, have the skill sets to dig into a smaller business and really let that business owner feed himself, basically.
And so when you're first talking with a business like this, right, what do you see as kind of the common issues with pretty much? I mean, and I know it's a broad spectrum here, right? Since you do deal with a broad type of companies, but typically, what are the biggest issues that you first see and help with?
Yeah, well, I think as it applies to, I think, what your audience would be most interested in, smaller businesses tend to grow organically, sort of by osmosis, rather than intentionally, because the founder has a particular skill. That particular skill may not translate into growing a business, because the disciplines of, and this is why I use the word disciplines, the disciplines of managing a business are different than the different disciplines of doing the work. Okay. So let's say someone gets into roofing. They are great at sourcing products and materials. They're great at selling roofing. They're great at putting it on. They know how to manage a small team. Does not mean they know how to manage and that at scale. And so a lot of times a business kind of tops out at the founder's ability to manage the team. That is where we find businesses for acquisition. They are already doing a fine job at whatever scale they're at, but there's a lot of internal value creation that can be had simply applying, back to the idea of discipline, simply applying some foundational disciplines to how you run a company. Now we can unlock that and then put capital behind it. We can get team marketing people. We can put operations folks. We can look into, how do we cut costs without, sacrificing anything necessary, which there's usually a lot of that. But how do we scale that opportunity? How do we grow it? But that's usually a processes systems thing. Whereas, small businesses tend to be, again, back to this idea of relationship. They tend to be heavily oriented towards a relationship, holding the whole thing together rather than results.
Okay. So, all right. I talk with roofing companies all the time, right? And 4 to 5 of them every single day. And the common thing when we bring clients on with us is, and it's noticeable right away, is that the lack of actual systems in place, right? For specific things like lead, we're good at lead generation with clients, but how they handle those leads is usually dependent on whether they're going to be successful or not, right? So what would you say to a roofing company who's sitting out there listening that's like, okay, well, it's just me and maybe one other person, and we're running this whole thing here together. How would you tell them to grow enough, let's say, to where they can exit in 10, 15, 20 years, whatever that it is that they choose to do that?
First, I would say that as an entrepreneur or a founder, however you want to think about yourself, if your business, or if the business is not serving your life in some way, go get a job. You'll probably work less. You'll probably have less responsibility. You might make more money, certainly with less hassle and consternation. Now, usually pride gets in the way of making that intelligent decision. But for the rest of those folks who are like, no, I'm on mission here. This is what I want to do with my life. The best hours of the day, the best days of the week, the best weeks of the months, I'm going to spend my time doing this business. The first thing I would suggest is you need outside eyes. If you could have made the change, you would have. That's a very common theme. So people are constantly looking for new resources, but they don't know how to use them. They don't know why they should use them in actual practice. And it is the practice which makes you better. So you got to go find somebody who's done it to be able to help you do it.
Right.
That's and too often, but back to, pride won't let me leave my failing or struggling business. Pride also prevents me from working with other smart people, because they're going to tell me, here's the things you need to do. And they're going to point out your flaws, the things that aren't working. And that I think usually people have to get to a point of significant failure before they're okay with having somebody really see the flaws. And this is not uncommon. Yeah. I did some consulting with the largest non-union painter in our area. And he had been part of consulting groups for years and masterminds and all sorts of stuff. But his profitability was plus or minus nothing. And he felt the pressure of getting older. How am I going to turn this business around? What am I going to do next? When we dug in there, we did a comparison, which is, took us maybe 2 or 3 months, but we did a quick comparison of his P&L versus his job costing data. And there was a gap. The gap is about 20% of revenue was not accounted for in the job costing data. He was paying a bookkeeper to do job costing. That was our first thought. It was like, well, do you job cost? Oh yeah, I job cost. No, you don't. You don't do all the job costing. Oh, where's this 20%? Oh, those jobs are too small to job cost. I was like, what do you mean they're too small to job cost? Those might be too small to take. And what happened was after we did this analysis of his P&L and his job costing data, we discovered that of the types of painting he did, you can't do decks anymore. You can't, because you drive the cost so low to compete with all the other people, with all the people who paint decks, that you cannot do it profitably. And I know for the last 20, 30 years, you've been saying yes to this stuff because you think activity means progress.
Yeah.
But you're losing money on every single one of these decks. Oh, also, you can't do exterior painting anymore because you cannot outpaint the college guys who walk around, and put a sign on your door. You can't do it. You drive your costs so low. It's not profitable. You're not efficient. You don't have a team for this. You don't have some of the tools. So therefore you're losing so much money. And what happened was all of the profitability of that 8%, which was pretty profitable, was wiped out completely by the 20%. And he didn't know, certainly wasn't following those numbers. And the opportunity there, it's interesting. The mastermind folks didn't catch it. The accountant didn't catch it. Why did we catch it?
Yeah.
Why did our analysis look into it? And that's because we had some disciplines, number one, outside of that industry. We knew how to read the numbers of a business, not the numbers of painting. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Exchange something else for painting.
Right.
And now but you can look at the numbers and you can figure out what's going wrong here. So the next step, so then what we did is we said, well, if we look at all this, you're still, we think we can push up the profitability here because you're driving your numbers too low. You think you're competing on price, and I'm saying you're not.
Yeah.
Because someone who wants to pay someone to paint is not too price. Price is a bit more elastic for that individual. And so we said you should increase your prices, and here's where you should be, right? And he was terrified, scared. Well, what does he need to do to get past that fear? He needs more information.
Right.
And not just information, but here's what's coming next. That's whatever all the fear is. It's yes, and it's everything that happens and then. Everything happens after and then, that's what you're afraid of. You don't know what that is. Well, I can tell you what it is. So we back tested. We had this P&L. We had now a breakdown of the projects. We were like, we're not taking any of these projects anymore because there's no chance we can compete at all. And here's what's going to happen. We'll make some assumptions. If we increased your price by X percentage or X dollars, what do you think your customer lost is going to be? And we agreed to the assumptions. And then we just did a back test on the analysis and said, all right, here's what would have happened to your last 5 years of profitability by year if you make the changes. And I know you're scared too, but if you agree that if you raise your price by 20%, you're going to lose 30% of your customers. What does that do? You should at least run the math. He was incapable of running the math. It wasn't his business, right? He shouldn't. He doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And his accountant doesn't necessarily know how to do that either because sometimes they're just putting things in the right buckets. Mm-hmm. What do the buckets mean? I don't know. How do they interact with another? I don't know. And this is a marketing issue, right? All of these things, they circle back around. So the outcome of this was that he did raise his prices. He actually started getting more and better business because he was no longer talking to all the people who were the unprofitable folks. And then we taught him how to say no. No, you can't have this free add-on. No, I'm not going to paint your cabinets just because I'm here painting this wall. I have a change order. And I said, I will meet with you monthly and I promise it's going to be okay. You do not have to be afraid. And I did. I met with him every month and we reviewed how his business had changed. We're managing the business, not painting. And that, he then a year later, he came in for his sort of yearly checkup. He said, Jace, I just want to let you know I've made more money in this past year than I've ever taken bonus in the past 20 something years. And then he chuckled and he said, that's not an excuse to charge me more.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Right. So what's the end story? Did he end up selling his company? What is he still running it?
He did. He found a transition plan, and started building after all these years, started building a retirement nest egg.
I love that. And it's something to keep in mind for every business owner. Everyone listening to this most likely are entrepreneurs. Is just that if you're not profitable at stuff, why do it? I love that whole premise of everything that you were talking about there.
It has to be serving your life. If it doesn't serve your life, it's serving your pride.
Right. Right.
And I don't know which one you want to feed, but my pride has never needed to be served.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. So we talked about some of the what you look for, right? So if a company is going to sell, right? They're thinking about selling, right? They've got to be profitable. They've got to have systems in place, right?
If it's a turnaround, we have people who can help with turnarounds. And, for your listeners, if a person just needs a review of something, we have consultants on our team who will dig into a business and help all of those things that I just talked about. We can help uncover those things and give you tools and systems and a plan.
Interesting. Love that. And so what are the types of systems that you commonly come in and plug in to, let's say, a roofing company type business, a service business?
Disciplines. Now, here's an example. We were talking to a manufacturer recently, and they are tens of millions of dollars, family owned business, doing a great job, really healthy margins. But they were talking to us a little bit about, if a project goes over budget, it goes over time or whatever, generally people just get their bonuses. Now, that's fine. It's been working for you all these years. Back to this idea of relationship is holding this thing together. But you've been doing such a good job. The results are pretty good. Now, we know that one of the things we're going to put into there is we're going to tie everybody to the results. So if you want to be over time, if you want to be over budget, it's going to affect the bottom line, which means you're going to make less. And once you tie a person's pay, their compensation, to results, and you show them the direct path today about how the whatever I'm responsible for today. And I'm just going to make the assumption that people know what they're responsible for, which is a terrible assumption to make. And I get it. And we can talk about that if you like. But if I assume that you know what you're responsible for and you know when you're successful, if that's true, and you tie a direct line between what you're responsible for to the bottom line, how it affects profitability and your compensation, I guarantee behaviors change. Now, the only reason behavior won't change is somebody's incapable because they're incompetent, right? Or they don't want to. And if in both cases, you should wonder why they're on your team.
Right. 100%. So you've said discipline several times, right? Instead of like systems. What's the difference there in your mind?
Because systems are not disciplines. You can be disciplined to use a system. You could just be disciplined. Yeah. So for instance, I've got a buddy who happens to work with business turnarounds. He's got a book that's coming out here soon that we're not ready to publicize, but maybe he'll be on your podcast. He does manufacturing turnarounds. He's a fantastic at it, right? He talks about every day he gets up at 4 a.m. He goes to bed at a certain time, gets up at 4 a.m. Is it a system? No, it's a discipline. And you can have disciplined thought, right? Uh-huh. That is not necessarily a system. It's a discipline, right? When I go into a meeting, here's the types of things I think about. And I discipline myself to do that. That discipline, if you don't have discipline, there's no amount of systems that are going to help you. If you are disciplined, you can have whatever system works well and you'll stick to it. But if you just fundamentally an undisciplined person, that's the person who's like, it doesn't matter when I arrive on time. Really? Doesn't matter how long this meeting goes. Doesn't matter, right? Whether they get their bonuses or they not. The discipline to adhere to the system is important. That's where it fundamentally begins. And there are more disciplines than there are. Maybe that's not true, but I think there are more disciplines than there are systems, simply because systems tend to exist in certain domains, So we might have a system that we go through for billing, and the discipline is that we run that system every Friday or whatever it is.
Right. Okay. I love that. And you're right. I mean, people have to have discipline in order to run a system, right? A system can be in place, but if it's not run, then what does it matter? Right.
Right. So like a weekly meeting, the discipline of having a weekly meeting. I run an agenda for the team every weekend, and I send it out before the meeting on before the weekend's over for the Monday weekend. That's or for the Monday meeting. That's a discipline. If I become undisciplined in that, then what happens is the team becomes fragmented and they think I don't know what's going on. And the results might indicate that too. So I have the discipline of writing up that agenda for what we're going to hit on Monday morning.
Love that. Love that. So switching gears a tiny bit here, right? And we've talked about this before the meeting a tiny bit. I have really been digging into AI for the past couple of years. And I think that you said that, you've been working with it for quite a bit longer than that. So let's talk about how the use of AI, how can business owners, how can roofing company owners specifically, use AI in their business right now?
If
and
I
know
can,
that's a
I'd like
loaded
to
question.
No, I'd like to take it from an opposite angle, from the other side of it.
Right.
Right. Because there's all sorts of uses for AI, but much like I think maturing in life or doing anything, for certainly a capable individual like an entrepreneur, like I'm starting stuff from scratch. Not many people do that, right? Yeah. And not many people, and far fewer are successful at it. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of ways to do something, but what should we not use AI for, or what should we understand about AI, which then influences what we use it for? AI does not necessarily think. It's a pattern matching system. And if it matches a pattern, it also doesn't know it's spewing things that don't make sense. Right. You wouldn't know unless you had domain knowledge. And that's where people who use or look to AI, it seems, to fill in to go too far into taking its recommendations, but they didn't know the question to ask because they didn't have the domain knowledge for what question is the appropriate question to get the result out.
Right.
And so oftentimes it spews nonsense and a person doesn't even know because they have no idea about that domain knowledge. So I think when we get back to what should they use or what can they use AI for, it can make all sorts of things faster if you know what questions, where you're headed and what questions to ask and what results should look like. That's the important part. So for instance, I just put together an outline for a podcast episode that I'm producing and co-hosting. If I just said, hey, give me a podcast episode, that's not enough information. Here's what I want it to be based on. Here's where I want to head. Here's what I need to include. Here's the time frame I want to stay in. Here's the variables of who's on it, where we're on it, where it's going to be distributed, all these other things. All of these things, because I've done podcasts, hundreds of them. Right. If I was just starting out and I just said, hey, I want a podcast script, it's going to produce me a script that's going to produce a really weird podcast.
Yeah, 100%. I agree on that. So, and what's your thoughts on agents, right? Because agents right now are kind of becoming this big buzzword, this big thing. And we've experimented with agents as well, right? And are building our own kind of things. But what are your thoughts on the new agents, right? Kind of coming out here. Some things like, I don't know, there's Lindy, there's a whole bunch of different platforms that you can use that you can build agents to do specific things for your company.
Yeah. So the idea of agents is not new, but it is being popularized with AI. And the risk on it is it's too simple. And because it's too simple, bad data in gets bad data out, right? And so I think what we will find is that this proliferation of AI produces a lot of noise and far more mistakes than successes, just as like en masse.
Yeah.
And people don't even know that they're mistakes until it starts botching things up. Right. So the agent road is back to this idea of domain knowledge. An agent has specific domain knowledge or to the processes and systems and what's acceptable and what's not. And back to like, people used to give it prompts like, you are a such and such. You had to tell AI, you are a copy editor. When you look at this copy, here's what I'm doing, right? You don't have to do that with a person.
Yeah.
Hey, can you look at this and just give me your feedback on it? AI will be like, how? So what? And it's just going to blurt something out because words go together. again, back to its own, it recognizes patterns. Agents go a little deeper and say, okay, to move things from here to here, this is what a name or a label might look like for a calendar item, a calendar event. There are certain ways you name a calendar event. So it's just a tighter domain with a specific action and a way to measure the result. That's what LLMs, large language models. That's why it's not artificial intelligence. It's a large language model,
right?
Which goes back to language. Agentic AI adds on a process or a system, and tighter domain knowledge, tighter constraints on what it should or shouldn't be doing, for that particular action, and then how to take action, which is actually an API issue.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And I mean, it kind of goes into programming, right? Coming at it from a programming standpoint of...
Well, if you are a programmer, you will interact with LLMs totally different. I'm a programmer. Right. So when I say, I had it clean up a list the other day, and I said, for each row. Yeah. Only a programmer would say, for each row. Right. 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 And then I specifically said, this column, I gave it a text file. I happen to know it's going to think about it in columns. Yeah. Right. So I gave it information that I would normally write code in, because I know that it's trying to figure out how to build its process. I'm seeding the process for it. Yeah. And then asking it to interact with the data in a bit of an unstructured way. That is, you're miles ahead when you understand how the computer thinks, rather than just assuming the computer thinks like a person, because it does not. Right. And that's where people will get themselves into trouble with AI. And in addition, AI, by virtue of becoming a large language model, what is it trained on? It's trained on stuff that exists that it could read, right? Or in some cases, watch and convert to data points. Now, when we produce more stuff with AI, what does it start to read? It starts to read its own stuff. Yeah. And I'm not certain that it's ever worked for any person to just sit there with the sound room of their own brain and somehow come off with something amazing. Yeah. So over time, I think that this actually becomes a little more homogenous, right? Okay. One thing starts to look like the other, starts to look like the other, starts to look like the other. Right. And back to your, what could roofing companies do? I would not say, hey, how do I market a roofing company? Or what should I do for this brand? You're going to look like everything else because it's a large language model. There's a way to think about these stuff. Right. That's why you need a person who can see what is not shown to them. They can hear what is not said. And since AI is not a person, or LLMs are not people, and they actually don't think, they certainly don't feel, and they don't even know why they said something, or why they shouldn't. That's the other thing. AI doesn't know what not to say. Right. That's where you think you really need a person. Don't rest too much on LLMs unless you're really sure of your domain knowledge in that area.
Yeah, and training. If you've trained it, right? If let's say that you've trained your ChatGPT or Claude, on you, everything, right? That about yourself, and everything that it should know about you, then it's highly possible it's going to spew nonsense, right? Which is what,
and it doesn't know you. It doesn't know that you're not telling it things. It doesn't know that you're hiding. It doesn't even know that you're lying to yourself, right? And if you and here's why. You could put into AI, into any LLM at this point in time, hey, here's a business idea I'd like to have. Show me how to make this profitable, and it will come up with some nonsense. And most likely at the beginning, you're such a great thinker. No, you're not. That's a terrible business idea, and you could talk to anybody about it. This is an awful idea. Don't do it. Right. LLMs will hype you up, because who writes into an LLM? You should tell people not to do stuff. You should tell them, no, you shouldn't start a business because you don't have the disciplines to start a business. And unless you plan to create them out of nothing, you're going to fail. So don't put your life savings into this. You can't even get your butt up in the morning. Right. LLMs will not understand that that's a key component. Right.
100%. All right. Well, man, thank you so much for all this so far. All right. We're going to pause here for a real brief message from our sponsor, roofingsites.com. Since 2018, roofingsites.com has helped roofers double their sales by getting their marketing right using the 4R roofing marketing system. If you're a roofing company owner wanting to grow your business, be sure to go to roofingsites.com and sign up for a roofing marketing strategy session with me. Okay, and we are back for our lightning round. Are you ready, Jason?
Oh man, the lightning round. Here we go.
All right, so here are the rules. You have 1 minute or less to answer each of these questions. Okay, you ready for that?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Awesome. Okay, number one, what is your favorite personal hack? This could be a book, this is a podcast, pretty much anything goes here.
The first thing that comes to my mind is know thyself, and then take action on that. So here's what I mean. I know that I need white space to be able to think. I need alone time, right? And so I build in time to reflect across what's been working, what hasn't been working, what changes do I need to make, what are the opportunities, what's the risk, right? I take an inventory and assess that on a pretty regular basis, particularly when I feel like things are just getting a little out of hand. I got too many moving parts. I steal myself away and I reflect. The hack is reflection. How you do that, when you do that, you got to know yourself and figure out what's going to work for you. But find white space and find a time to reflect and just take a little inventory on yourself. And there are specific questions you could ask, but that's where I would begin.
Love that. Love that. And I read a long time ago about Bill Gates doing that exact same thing, except he called it a sabbatical or whatever that he called it, for like a week where he just completely unplugged from absolutely everybody and everything. Yeah.
It takes a while to get out of the noise so that you can hear your own thoughts. And those thoughts have a time to settle down. And then you need to direct your brain. Your brain's not ready to be directed until you give it time and space to think.
I love that. Love that. All right. Next question. What is your favorite business hack? Again, this could be book, podcast, whatever. Anything goes here.
Estimate the time for tasks and time block them.
Yeah.
You can put all sorts of tasks on the list, but people are even good with prioritizing. Sort of happens naturally for a lot of people. But unless you know how much time it's going to take, you don't have all the information for your brain to take action. And then you can discipline it to take action by writing down the task in sort of a general priority, and then taking an exhaustive list of all the things you think you need to do, right? Which could be a byproduct of reflection. Then if you put a time estimate, you'll go, oh, that's right. That's only going to take me 10 minutes. Yeah. And now all of these 100 things I need to do start to sort of tuck them in. And then if you went, hey, I've got a whole Monday, what can I jam into there? I'm going to set aside an hour for this. I'm going to set aside 2 hours for this. Time block them. Set yourself a calendar invite and then have the discipline to show up for yourself to get that thing done. You'd expect it from an employee. Treat yourself as an employee. Put the employee hat on.
100%. And what's crazy is that I have to teach time blocking to my employees coming in, right? I assume that everybody kind of knew how to do that. But when you look at their calendars, you're like, that's a blank calendar. Why is your calendar blank, right? Your calendar should be dictating exactly what you're going to be doing, right?
Yep. And people are like, well, the unexpected things come up. Fine. Time block it.
Yeah. 100%. Right. Block it out. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then when you don't get things done today, move them over to tomorrow or the next day. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to just jump in cold turkey on this stuff. Just start with the things you have today. And I promise it'll smooth things out.
And most of the times, at least for me, I'll block out an hour for something and it's going to 100% take like 4 hours, right? Because once you dig into it, you're like, oh, okay, this is going to take a little bit longer than I thought.
Yeah. You might find that you're a bad estimator based on whatever it is. And at least you now know it should go into your reflection that, oh, when I have a thing that I think is going to take 4 hours, largely it doesn't. I'm a bad estimator. Fine. And then you'll be good. You'll start to become a better estimator because until you measure it, you cannot manage it.
100%. 100%. All right. Next question. What is the best advice that you've ever been given? And you get bonus points here if you tell me how you applied it.
Oh boy, the best advice I've ever been given. I've been given a lot of advice through the years, and it's hard for me to figure out what the best is. So I'm going to go with influential advice. Some of the most recent influential advice I've been given is people should know when you came in the room and when you left. It goes back to gentleman in his mid 70s. I have a great relationship with him, helped him write his book. And he said, one of the things I'm thinking about is 7 generations out. What am I doing today? And what legacy I'm going to leave that like people knew I came into this world.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if we think about that and make it actionable to today, I just took it, and this was my own statement, but I was like, at Thinker, back to what we do, I said, if we acquire a company and they don't know when we showed up and they don't feel pain if we were to leave, we just shouldn't be there. We either don't know what we're doing or we can't make a difference. So I think particularly for entrepreneurs, we wanted to make some sort of impact. You should know what value you bring that is a measurable and meaningful impact. If you don't know, then take it back to reflection time and go, why is it important that I'm here?
Love that. Absolutely love that.
It'll fundamentally change the way you communicate, and it will fundamentally change your business when you start acting it out.
Yeah. 100%. And I love that because you've got to know, well, it goes back to what you said earlier, know thyself, right? And you've got to have that reflection time to do that.
I mean, it's very practical, super practical in nature. I had a guy years ago come to me and said, "Hey, I want to start this carpet cleaning business." I said, "Why do you want to start a carpet cleaning business?" I said, "Do you know how many carpet cleaning businesses are in the area?" "Oh, there's like 3. I was like, "That's not true." And I did a quick Google search and I was like, "No, there's like 20. I said, "Why does this area need another carpet cleaning business?" And he said, "Well, I'm an employee at this other carpet cleaning business. I've been there and I didn't get a raise the past 2 years." And I was like, that's not a reason to start a carpet cleaning business. There's all sorts of reasons that you may not have received a raise. He's like, yeah, but I was working hard and we had more jobs. Okay. Also, this tells me how inexperienced you are at running a business. And now you want to take all of the weight on your own shoulders and just create this out of the blue.
Yeah.
And he expected he was going to come in there like, back to the conversation of like LLMs and that type of stuff. Like he expected he was going to come in there. I was going to tell him all the ways to make this successful. And I said, I think that you ought to figure out why you'd want to do it in the first place. What tells you this is going to be successful? Not just because you want to do it. So what? There's all sorts of things you might want to do. And you're now employed as a carpet cleaner, right? Yeah. That is a stable thing. You're going to trade stability for instability. Tell me about your life and tell me how you're going to survive that. And you know what it came out is he all of a sudden got all deflated.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, just give it to me straight. Have you already done this?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I already bought a truck.
There you go.
Okay, fine. Then it's better work.
You burned the bridge, right?
Yeah. And he's like, well, I've got a couple customers. Yeah. From where? Oh, my church. Okay. How long before you've run through all the people in your church and they don't need carpet cleaning on the regular? Where are you going to go now? Do you have any money for marketing? Do you have any of this? No, zero plan at all. I haven't been making enough. I haven't received a raise. I think I'm worth more. You know who doesn't care if you're worth more? Your customer.
Yeah.
Not a one customer is like, man, tell me about how rough it is to run that small business and how I might be able to support you. Nobody. They only care about themselves.
Yes.
So Your reason for getting into business was very selfish. Fine. You didn't know what value you brought to the carpet cleaning world. And now you just show up as another carpet cleaner, which now I bet you're going to compete on price. And then you're going to kill yourself slowly.
Right.
Death by 1,000 cuts. And you're going to wonder, then you're going to eventually show back up and say, I'm not making any money. I haven't made money for 20 years. Yeah. That's because you didn't even know why you should exist.
Right.
Fundamentally, you didn't know why. And until you know why you should exist, you shouldn't get about whatting it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That goes to the Simon Sinek, start with why. That's like one of my absolute favorite TED Talks. And I send it to every single one of my incoming clients. I'm like, you need to watch this because this is important stuff right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we went through that, like this, my private equity firm, like we went through this. Well, I went through this discussion in my own head for years. What is this? And why am I feeling this way? And I had to move my life into a point where I was like, okay, I'm convinced of this. I will get up every day to do this thing. And here's why we exist. And now as we've, put the team together and we've got deal flow. We're having these conversations where they're passing on traditional private equity because they're not talking about, hey, I respect that this is a family owned business and tell me about your employees and tell me how, who should be, who we need to take care of through this deal and how are we going to incentivize them? All of that stuff, which is just contrary to how the whole industry sort of talks.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, hey, there are people at the end of this thing. And I had an old business partner who said, yeah, it's just business. And he kept on saying, it's just business, just business. But it's like, it's not just business. Yeah. This is my life. This is my family's life. These are the lives of my employees. And if we want them to take pride in their work, pride is not a business concept. Pride is a personal concept. This is all very personal. Yeah. And when we roll that out to a family-owned business, they're like, yeah, because one of the hangups that family-owned businesses or privately held businesses have to transitioning to whomever, they always ask, because they can always figure out, oh, we'll get the number. Like who can come up? Yeah. Like there's so much cash. You can get the number. They always ask what's going to happen to my employees. Right. And there's not a private equity firm on the planet who can tell them except us.
Yeah.
Now, translate that to roofing. Yep. What's so amazing and spectacular about you and the team that you have that you are not just another commodity. Just another roofing company. And until you know that, you have no strength of conviction.
Right.
And you are just like everybody else. You can buy your stuff. Now it's down to how fast you can manage the company. Okay, fine. We wanted to manage this thing at scale. Great. But your customer doesn't care. Like, people talk about, here's my process and stuff. Your customer doesn't care.
Yeah.
If you said nothing to me and you just got this thing done, I couldn't care less how you did it. Right? Yeah, fine. You did it, right? We think that our customers get wrapped up in all the detail. They don't. They get wrapped up into the storyline and the belief in you. But if you don't even know why you should believe in you, how are you ever going to tell anybody else?
100%. 100%. All right, Jason, this is the last question, by the way, how can the Roofer Growth Hacks podcast folks get in touch with you, and how can we support you and encourage you moving forward?
Sure. Well, you can contact me at jason@thinkerventures.com if you've got any questions about the things we're talking about. I do a considerable amount of work through the years with small businesses, medium-sized businesses, helping them move past these stuck points. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. And then, we've got consultants and whatnot on our team who can dig in and help people. But I would just say that what helps me, and I'm privileged to be able to do this. Just had a conversation earlier this week with the lady. She got to the end of our conversation. She's like, man, this is what you just gave me there is priceless. That jazzes me up because what I like to stretch this muscle of really getting down. Well, I'll say it this way. Being able to see what is not shown to me, being able to hear what is not said, and then figuring out what the core of it is, who you are, and then how that can be expressed in your business. I get a jazz out of that. So when I get to do that for other people, it keeps me strong. It develops that muscle, makes me stronger. And then I love to connect people up with opportunity.
Love it. Love it. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. You just dropped a ton of knowledge in this very short amount of time. So that's super cool. Thank you so much.
Happy to dig in more.
Yeah. Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
I appreciate it, man. I think the things that you do where you're there to help people who are in the thick of it, I mean, there's got to be resources, and you're a great one. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, how about that, roofers? Was that pretty awesome or what? I know I have a whole page of notes that I wrote down here. One of my biggest takeaways there, and you might have heard me ask about it. He kept saying disciplines, right? And discipline, that it takes disciplines and you have to have the disciplines. And I finally asked about that because to me, as a business owner, I think about systems, right? And building those systems. But he made a point here of saying that anybody can have systems, right? Anyone can build systems. It's the discipline, right? In order to continue running those systems. Okay. So you can have all sorts of systems in place, but if you don't run them, if you don't follow those systems, if you don't, let's say that I have a system to work out every single day. Right. And I know that every day I'm going to walk 5 miles with a 50-pound, weighted vest on, let's say. That's my system. Okay. For staying in shape and all that kind of stuff. But if I don't have the discipline to actually do it, that system is completely useless, right? So it's the same thing in business, is that we have to ensure that we have not only systems in place, but we have to have the discipline to run those systems. I love that. And I put 2 stars on my notes right here, right beside that. The next one, right, this was his personal hack. Okay. What's your favorite personal hack? He said, know thyself, right? And you got to take time to reflect and give yourself a little bit of white space. You know, as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to just go, and then we drop, right? Then we do the same thing the next day, go, and then we drop. Well, one of my mentors, one of my coaches actually is constantly asking, one of the things that he asks is, you know, how much time did you take off this month? Okay. How much time did you take away from the business, step away from the business? It's important to get out on your own. And this is why I love backpacking and camping and, you know, going up in the mountains and so forth, is that I love getting away from everything, because it's at that point that you start getting some clarity about what you want to do. Okay. Y'all roofers, you're constantly in the field, man, you know, and you gotta, it's best, right? You don't gotta do nothing, right? But it's best if you take a little bit of time away from the day-to-day grind and really plan out what you want. I recommend to all the roofers that we work with, okay, I usually recommend that at least once a quarter that you step away from the business, you see how it went this past 90 days, okay? And then you plan out the next 90 days. And then once a year that you step aside, right, for a couple of days, 1 to 2 days, maybe a little bit longer, you know, everyone's a little bit different, but take a few days off and really reflect on how that year went, and did that year go according to your plan? And if not, then let's build a plan for the next year. So we're coming up into Q4 here, right? Depending on when this actually drops, you know, we're heading into Q4, right? The final 3 months of 2025. This might be about the time that we need to start thinking about 2026 and really how we're going to achieve our goals in 2026. Okay. Is that maybe creating a system with discipline now, right? For marketing? Is it creating a system for sales, a system and discipline, right? For sales? Is it creating, improving your operations? Is improving how you get paid, right? Your finances, improving how you hire people. Okay. So anyways, that personal hack is I absolutely love that. Next one that I started was time blocking. If you know me, if you've listened to me for any length of time, you'd know I love time blocking. In fact, I've got a coach that coached me 20 years ago on, he calls it block and tackling, right? You block out your time on your calendar and then you tackle it when it gets there. I'm literally doing that right now, right? This was blocked out on my calendar to create this podcast, and I am tackling it by, well, getting there done, right? So, and I've taught this principle to my kids. I've taught this to my employees, is because time blocking, if you don't block out your time and have the discipline, right? It comes back to that discipline piece on that front thing. So thanks, Jason. If you don't have your discipline to actually tackle that time block piece, right, then you're not going to achieve your goals. You're not going to get stuff done. Okay. So yeah, business hack. That was Jason's business hack. There was time blocking. It is so critical, because if you don't do it, your day's going to go and it's going to get taken care of for you. Okay. So I would rather run my business than have my business run me. All right. That's going to do it for another episode of Roofer Growth Hacks. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you connect with me online. Connect with me on Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn. I check that every once in a while. You know, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, wherever that you found us. Make sure that you give us a big gig'em, right? Which is that big thumbs up. I'm a Texas A&M Aggie, so we love the big gig'em. Give us a likes up and subscribe to us online wherever that you found us. You know, just keep on coming back here. We are dropping episodes every single week. I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, roofingsites.com. Since 2018, roofingsites.com has helped roofers double their sales by getting their marketing right using the 4R roofing marketing system. If you're a roofing company owner wanting to grow your business, be sure to go to roofingsites.com and sign up for a roofing marketing strategy session. Also, this past year, I published my book, The Ultimate Guide to Digital Marketing for Roofers. If you're a roofing company owner and you don't have this book in your hands, I will send it to you for free, or at least a digital copy of it. Just go to go.roofingsites.com and I'll send you a free digital copy of my book. Well, roofers, join me next time when we connect with another great roofing entrepreneur and learn how they hack their growth. Until then, I'm Chris Hunter. Thanks and gig 'em.